Thank you. Welcome to everyone who braved the weather here in Kilat Chaverim. This week is both Parshas Vayikra and Parshas Zachar. I do want to address a lot of the issues that we're going to be bumping into in Sefer Vayikra, the idea of korbanos and relating to them. But this week I think we are going to try to look at Parshas Zachar and try to see a little bit about this whole sense of Amalek, what the struggle is with Amalek, why this strong hatred, this memory. When we look at it in the Pshat, it doesn't look so bad. I mean, the Jews were coming out, they're going through the desert, and these Amalekim attacked them and got beaten and ran away. Okay. Why is it this is something that has become such a part of the heritage when we see it here in Parshas Beshalach, in that reading of it? We also will be reading Kiseitze. Right? It says that we have to Vayomer Hashem al Moshe Ksov zo zikaron b'sefer v'sim ba'oznei Yoshua. You have to write this down. You have to give it over to Yoshua, who will be the next leader. Ki mocho emcha zechar Amalek mitachas hashamayim. Amalek will be wiped out, specifically mitachas hashamayim, from under the sky. Did we think that Amalek had a space program that had to be dealt with at the time? I don't think so. Why does it emphasize mitachas hashamayim? The words asher karacha baderech that we read, that Amalek cooled you off on the way, is one of the descriptions. Rashi brings down from the Medrash that the Jews coming out of Mitzrayim, they were hot. They were like an ambatya rosachas. They were this boiling, bubbling bathtub that nobody wanted to go into. Everybody standing around thinking about dipping a toe in there, but not doing it. And then this one shoyte echad, they said, this one fool comes, and he goes, Geronimo, and he does a cannonball in there, and he screams and goes running out with third-degree burns. So they say, okay, he got burnt, but niskarero ha'ambatyo, this became an expression. Somebody cooled off the bathtub. This is not a principle of physics that his body temperature changed the temperature. What it means is that there was something that looked unassailable, something that looked like nobody can mess with it. And here somebody did. It's true, he suffered for it, but he did. It takes it down from the status that it was at. So some people view that in terms of how other nations viewed the Jewish people. That's why Amalek is called the Reishis Goyim Amalek. Amalek is the precursor to all other nations. He opens the door, he leads the path, he gets things going for that attack. But it says also that it affected the Jews, right? That it cooled you down. How could it cool us down? We just came out of Mitzrayim. We just had fabulous miracles. We had Moshe Rabbeinu with us. There was a miraculous cloud. There were pillars of fire. So Amalek's there sticking his tongue out at us. What is it that's there? Why is it that they would bring us down? The timing and the reason for it is also fascinating. When we look, we found just not long after going through Yam Suf, after the splitting of the sea, Am Yisrael were thirsty. They didn't have water. And they argued with Moshe. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, Matarivun imadi, why are you arguing with me? Matnasun es Hashem, why are you testing Hashem? Okay, it got worse, it got there. Moshe Rabbeinu davened, and he hit the rock, water came out. And the place was called Masa Umriva. It was called a place of testing and argument. Al Riv B'nai Yisrael, because of the argument that B'nai Yisrael made, Val Nasatem et Hashem Lemor, and they tested Hashem, saying, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. Is Hashem really among us or not? That's a very key phrase, because right after that it says Vayavo Amalek. After this test, which was phrased as Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin, is Hashem really with us or not? Suddenly Amalek comes. Rashi brings a very strange medrash. He brings a medrash about a man who's carrying his son on his shoulders. right? And right, he's going around, and the son says, Abba, can I have an apple? He picks an apple off a tree, gives him, right? He wants something else. He gives it to him. Can you give me a drink? And then a guy's walking by, and the kid says, tell me, have you seen my father around? His father says, you don't know where I am? He puts him down on the ground, and a dog comes, right, and bites him. This is Vayikra Amolek. Now, did Am Yisrael really forget that Hashem was there? Were they like, yeah, we're surviving the desert, all these kind of things. I wonder who's doing it. It's like, why does Amalek coming remind them? Right? If anything, would make them think he's really not here. Seemingly, this question puts them into the realm of Amalek.
Didn't they invite it?
Invite?
Didn't they invite
Amalek, correct. Correct. With that, this triggers it, 100%. Yeah. So we have to see what about this triggers the Amalek response and what its purpose is. So let's look at the Shem Mishmuel, who deals with the name of the place that Amalek attacked them. It says, Vayovo Amalek vayilochem im Yisrael b'Refidim. He attacked them at a place called Refidim, and Chazal explained that as a contraction for the words Rafu Yadayim. Their hands were weak, were loose on the Torah and mitzvahs. Okay? Rifyon Yadayim means you can grip something tight, or you can grip it loosely. Okay, now, this is a Rashi that's pumped out by all the Rosh Yeshivas and Mashgichim in the yeshivas, especially when they want to try to keep people in line when it comes to Purim. They say, everybody's wasting their time now preparing plays and doing all these kind of things. You know what brings Amalek? Rifyon Yadayim min haTorah, Rafu Yadayim min haTorah. You're supposed to be wiping out Amalek, go to the Beis Medrash, all these kind of things. But the question that the Shem Mishmuel asked, the Sfas Emes asked this question also, is, but the Torah hasn't even been given yet. What is the idea of Rafu Yadehem min haTorah? They weren't holding on tight to the Torah. This is before, this Parshas B'Shalach. They didn't get the Torah yet. What was there to hold on to? That's going to be the beginning of our exploration. I just want to explain a little bit this image of Rafu Yadayim, of the weakening of hands. The Piasetzner Rebbe in his book Chovas HaTalmidim has a whole chapter about a spiritual difficulty which is called Hisrapus. Hisrapus, he compares it to Atzlus. Okay, Atzlut or Hitraput, if you want. Atzlus is laziness. And a person who's lazy usually knows that they're being lazy. And there are steps that they can take to try to stop them from being lazy. You go into some kind of framework, you get some kind of reward system, whatever it is. Hisrapus is much more difficult because a person who does something with Rifyon is doing everything, just he's doing it with the lowest possible battery. He's going through the motions. He's doing it robotically. That's the idea of Rifyon Yadayim. How does it have to do with the hands? Because if there's something you feel is really important and really valuable and really powerful, you hold on to it tightly. Two examples of this. One, which I always thought was a real true story, I told it to a person who was in the U.S. military, and he thinks the guy who told it to me was pulling my leg, but anyway, this is the story. When I grew up in shul, so there were people who were Vietnam vets who were there. So I used to like to talk to them. And one told me, he said that sometimes, he said, when we were camped out in the jungle in Vietnam, and somebody had to be on guard duty, and they were exhausted, how do you stop the person from falling asleep? So he said you would take a hand grenade. Now the way a hand grenade works, right, it's this little pineapple looking thing, and it's got the famous pin, and it's also got a squeeze handle. Now once you pull out the pin, there's a certain amount of seconds till it goes kaboom. Unless you're squeezing the handle shut, then it doesn't go kaboom. That allows you to throw it if you have to. So he said they would take the guy who was on guard duty, pull the pin out of a hand grenade and hand it to him so that he would be holding it the whole time. He said nobody fell asleep. Again, like I say, somebody questioned the veracity of this story, but it's a very good image of Rifyon Yadayim. Something which is really powerful, really meaningful, is something you hold on to tightly. So Rifyon Yadayim min haTorah means that somehow, even before the Torah was given, there's some weakening that's going on here. The second example is just one that came to me in that time of life where I had to buy small and expensive and shiny stone for my wife's finger in the pre-marriage period. So I was told, I was living in New York then, so I was told obviously Jews do not buy like in regular stores. That's for non-Jews to do, to go to Macy's or something like that. You have to go to somebody who knows somebody. So I go into this little door front on 47th Street where I get buzzed in. And, I told the guy my kind of budget, and when he stopped laughing, so he did root through his stones and put a couple things out there. And people had told me, now, even though this is a good guy, you were supposed to get it appraised. There are other people on 47th Street you go to get it appraised. So he showed me these 2 stones, and it would be one of those. I said, would you mind if I go to get them appraised? So he put them into these little envelopes like orthodontists used to put your elastic bands in for your braces, and he tossed them to me. 2 diamonds, right? I held them. He says, yeah, you can go to the guy across the street or something. And these were worth a few $1,000s, sachakol. And I was carrying them, and I was just walking through the street, probably the worst thing to do, clutching them, just until I got into the thing there, because I didn't want to lose them, drop them, as I do with many, many things. So that's the opposite of Rifyon Yadayim, okay? But why would Am Yisrael have Rifyon Yadayim right now? Somehow it must be connected to that question they asked, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. Is Hashem with us or not? So here's the way the Shem Mishmuel lays it out. We got to set the scene. This was during the time of Sfirat HaOmer. They knew that they were heading towards Matan Torah, the most significant event that was there. Moshe Rabbeinu had been told, the point of this exercise, the completion of that aspect will be for them to come out and to receive the Torah on Har Sinai. And Am Yisrael knew it. And they had a period of preparation, those 49 days. And they knew that they were not starting off on a spiritual level ready to receive the Torah. We have to remember the shift that was there. These were people of chomer ulvenim, of mud and bricks. In the more mystical Sfarim, it describes them that they left Mitzrayim in a state of the 49th gate of Tumah. So they knew they had to really do some big spiritual stuff to get ready for Matan Torah. And they tried. But they came to Refidim, which was the last stop before Sinai, and they said, didn't work. I'm still the same schnook that I was coming out of Egypt. I don't feel anything.
How did they know?
Oh, a person thinks that they can feel what's happening inside of themselves. They think. Okay, so when they looked at that, so then he said, Rafu Yudim Kmitya Ashim. They despaired. He said it's the same type of despair. Rifyon Yadayim is described in Yirmiyahu for a person who's facing war and feels, I can't win. That Rifyon Yadayim, you lose your strength. If there's an idea that I can't win, that I'm not going to be able to do it. And he said, Zeh haya nechshav lahem lechet. This was considered a chet. This doubt that they had, will we be able to do this? Now to us, it almost sounds very righteous. Ooh, they were so humble. They said, we're not worthy. We've been trying, but what is our trying worth? We're still not worthy, right? Etc. He said, no, that's not good. Why? Ki yesh lo la'adam liftoach b'Hashem yitbarach v'lasot kol asher nitztaveh. We have our marching orders. We have to do what we have to do. We make the mistake sometime of thinking that we pull the strings of the spiritual world by our own power, right? Parenthetically, I've been speaking to Talmud Chacham about this recently, and again, there are segulas that are well-rooted and are meaningful, and the ikar of the segula is what you learn from it and what you grow from it. But some people nowadays are looking for segulas because they think, I can twist Hashem's arm into doing something if I just do X, Y, and Z. If I hang upside down on an olive tree on Tu B'Shvat and say, I'll say for Tilim, my wishes will come true. Okay? That isn't our job to manipulate what happens in those worlds. Now, if these people really were honest, and the Shem Mishmuel says, let's not just assume they had an inferiority complex. Let's say they looked at themselves And he said, I still have the same lowly desires that I had in Egypt. I am still not excited about spirituality, just like I was in Egypt. I am not ready for this Matan Torah thing. He says, you should be paying no attention to that. Why? Ki ein matzor laHashem lo shia berega echad. There's a fascinating combination that's going on here. We have to do what we have to do, and what we are involved in certainly is not this worldly, right? You should not make the mistake of thinking that when a person shakes a lulav, that's the only meaning it has is Hashem made this, game show where we have to eat things and shake things and say things, and then He decides to reward us. For sure, each mitzvah that a person does, each positive action, each thing you resist in the negative, changes things in the world of ruchnius. But you might not feel or receive the benefit of that right away. Okay? You have no idea. He says, he returns to a theme that appears multiple times in the Shem Mishmuel. Right? Again, remember, everything we're doing is as a shliach of Hashem. And his father, the Avnei Nezer, said that's how we have such power in the spiritual world. Why should what I do, a physical meat and flesh and blood human being here in this world, be able to affect those worlds so powerfully? Because of the halachic principle of shlucho shel adam kamoto, that the messenger of someone is like them. When we say Asher kidshanu mitzvahs v'tzivanu, Hashem made us shlichim to do those mitzvahs, and that gives us tremendous power. But now the person might ask, okay, but I'm doing things and I'm not feeling anything. So he brings a fascinating principle from halacha, also about the idea of a shliach. When you hire somebody for a job, right? You hire someone to clear up your garden. You want it weeded, you want the lawn mowed, you want all sorts of things done. So in general, when you hire someone, the principle is, ein l'schirus ela basof. The person's salary comes at the end, at the completion of the period. Okay, so to the outside observer looking, wow, this guy worked really hard today and he walked away with nothing. In reality, he's building up his salary each day. It comes basof, at the end. So therefore he says, "V'chein einenu rachok li'ish adayin eino mezukach sheba'od zman koton yagia lishleimus im hu rak oseh mitzvahs Hashem yisbarach b'tmimus kamo shenitztaveh." A fascinating thing. He says, you think that you're so far, but you can never tell at which moment those things that you did are going to kick in and transform you. Now we might ask, why don't they happen right away? Why not pay as you go? In other words, I did a mitzvah, let me feel elevated right after the mitzvah, but many times I don't. I resisted something negative. Shouldn't I be flying? Many times I don't. So I heard, I forget the source, official Schechter brought this. He said it's almost like someone holding on to money for you, right? Somebody who knows something about the world of money and about investing. He may cool you down. You have an investment manager. And you say, wow, I heard there's this new thing called Bitcoin, right? Okay, let's hold on to it for now, right? Let's see where things are going. And then suddenly it comes and you really need money. And then the money's there and you're able to do it. Hashem decides at which times in your life those things that you've built up are going to kick in. You cannot tell when those are going to happen. Things were happening here, but don't be looking at, do I feel it? Do I not feel it? Am I closer to Hashem now? I'm not. I think I'm not. Just do. HaKadosh Baruch Hu handles the accounts. And He's giving the distributions when and where they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be. Okay, so this is a big key. There's a story that I love about one of the Karliner Rebbes, that an old woman came to the Rebbe and she had a tzara, and she introduced her request by saying, Rebbe, I've been to this tzaddik, didn't help. I was at that tzaddik, didn't help. Went to this tzaddik too, nothing. He said, so why'd you come to me? So she said, sometimes you have a horse and wagon the wagon's stuck in the mud. So one horse can't pull out of the mud. 2 horses, no. 3 horses, no. That 4th horse, that can be the one that pulls it out of the mud. He said, I like that. And gave her a good bracha. Meaning, there's also an idea of things building up. at different times. One thing adds into another and affects another, and we're not sure when and how those things are going to come and happen. So therefore, it's not worth thinking about. It's not worth examining that. Remember, Amalek is the gematria safek. That doubt that the person has is tricky. Okay? Rav Moshe Feinstein gave a similar mashal in terms of how a bracha works. He said that when people started asking him for brachas, he was a little uncomfortable. He said, I'm a posek from Lithuania. It's not my thing. But then he remembered, Chazal said, La'olam al yehei birchas hedyot kala beinecha. Never let the bracha of a regular person be light in your eyes. Right? The proof even being that famous bracha that the Shechina asked Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol to give. So he said, what does that mean? Why is that? Right? Somebody wandering around the street, doing whatever, comes over and says, hey, I want to give you a bracha. And I think, what's your bracha going to do? Never say that. He said, here's how I view it. Your tzara, your situation that you're stuck in is like a lock. And that lock needs a key to unlock it. Now, if you look at a key is made up of many, many bumps and ridges and dents. He said, until every single one of those little ridges and dents is there to match the grooves in the lock to be able to turn it, you can't get out. He said, that one person who's giving you that bracha, as simple as they may be, may have that one specific schut, that merit, that's that bump on the key that opens your lock. That's the way he looked at it. So therefore, it's true. A person says, I got a bracha, didn't do anything. Got a bracha, didn't do anything. Things are doing things. Things are building and connecting and creating in this way.
So the process of having to get the bracha also that changes you as a person, so there's more chance of getting what you want because you're...
Correct. All of this is really to bring to Kirvas Hashem. Meaning that's the goal and the name thing. So now, here's what's tricky about it. He says, Am Yisrael thought that they were supposed to do it themselves, and they felt that they were failing. They were supposed to purify themselves. They were supposed to get ready for Matan Torah. He says, V'zeh sheker. And that is a lie, as we can actually see. A few days later, Matan Torah happened, and they were ready. Paska zu amasam. That purity was there. And he says, this can be an explanation of what Chazal said, Im shikarta b'midos and mishkolos. If you lie in terms of measures, be careful of Amalek, because of a juxtaposition in Kiseitse of the Parsha of keeping honest measures and Amalek. But here it is also, if you're trying to measure your life, if you're trying to be the one who decides what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, he says, Amalek, who's the shorish of sheker, then comes. Then when you're living that lie, then he can come and get a hold of you. And once that happens, so a person feels, so what am I doing? What am I accomplishing? And that cools you down anymore, right? When you feel, I've been doing these things, I don't feel it. I don't feel that anything's happening. And this is a big danger. Now, he says, another aspect of it is that they also knew that in Mitzrayim, Hashem showed them a love which was not dependent on anything. When they came out of Mitzrayim, they saw that Hashem did everything for them, even though they were on a very low level. And now, they tested Hashem. They wanted to know, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. Meaning, is it really something that's connected to the things we do? Or is it simply that Hashem has this love of us and he decides to do chesed with us when he wants to, and here we're close to Matan Torah and he hasn't done this chesed? So here's the danger that Am Yisrael often face. And this is written about in other Sfarim I saw, in the Ishbitzer Sfarim, that it's true. Am Yisrael have a connection to Hashem at the source that is so deep and so powerful and so beyond everything in the world, it can never be affected. It's always there. That closeness is always there. But he says we should not be thinking about it. We should not be going there because that was pulled out before Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, when we didn't have Torah to focus on, so Hashem revealed this aspect that comes beyond all things. But it's dangerous for a person to try and say, well, if I'm part of Hashem and Hashem's part of me and we're so connected, so what difference does it make what I do or what I don't do? This is a very interesting Amalek form of suffix that comes out nowadays as well, right? There's an idea of just kind of general spirituality, right? That it's there, I'm part of the Great Spirit is part of me, and what I do doesn't matter. This idea of Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin, he says, is not something to think about or talk about in this world. In this world, it's a world of asiyah. It's a world of doing. And when we drop out of that, that's when Amalek comes. That's the world that we're in and the one we're supposed to be. This is the way the Sfas Emes explains his answer to this question. He asks again, Yesh lehavin, how can we understand? Adayin lo kiblu Torah. There was no Torah, so why do we say Rafu Yudei Mina Torah? So he says, what are yadayim? What are hands? He says hands are receptacles. People put things in your hands. It's true they didn't have the Torah, but they were supposed to be preparing their hands, the kelim, the vessels, to receive Torah. And that is what we have in our ability to do. This is what it says in Koheles. It says, Asher timsa yodcha la'asot b'kochacha aseh. What you can do with your hands, you are supposed to do here in this world. And then, from above nature, comes the help from Hashem. So in these weeks, they were supposed to be preparing their mitzvahs. They were supposed to be preparing the kelim to do these things. And this is where Amalek can strike. Amalek can strike, Rafu Yadei Min Torah, he says, Amalek cannot touch the Torah. The Torah is far above Amalek. Amalek cannot touch the essential connection of the Jewish soul with the Torah and with Hashem. That's also far above Amalek. But in this world of Tachas HaShamayim, you have to create the kelim in this world through deeds and through actions and through work in this world. And that's where he can come and get you. So the idea of the yadayim for Torah, of the preparation for Torah, of realizing it's true, you can never do everything, but you have to do what you're able to do in this world, even though the Torah comes from above, and even though that neshama inside of you is connected to the Torah, but this is the world of the yadayim. And that's why the hands are a theme throughout this, whether it's from Yaakov, Yodo ochezet ba'kev Esav, his hand held on to the ankle of Esav in their first interaction in this world. The battle with Amalek, Moshe Rabbeinu raising his hands. He's standing there, sitting there, with his hands raised. What is the idea of raising the hands? The hands are usually below our head. They're down here. They're for doing. But Am Yisrael has the ability of raising the hands and connecting them to that which is above. And this gets us to a major theme of Purim. Purim is famous, the Megillah is famous for not having the Shem of Hashem appear in there. The name of Hashem doesn't appear in that story. And we also forget that it took place over a bunch of years, right? 9 years, even 12 years from beginning to end. And if you would ask me, like, who was the vice president 12 years ago, I probably wouldn't know. We wouldn't put together the events that happened. It was this amazing interworking of events that happened and went there, but we don't see the name of Hashem in it. The Gemara says that the pasuk in Tehillim V'ro kol afsei eretz es Yeshuas Elokeinu, the ends of the earth saw how Hashem saved us. They said that was at Purim. What does this mean? Rav Hutner, speaking in one of his Purim Mesibas, right, which were very special gatherings of Divrei Torah and Kedusha and singing and drinking wine, and he would say these very deep Divrei Torah while in the middle of that. So he said the following: Hashem does mitzvahs. How does Hashem do mitzvahs? The Gemara in Brachas tells us that Hashem wears tefillin. Okay, I remember in 8th grade we learned this, and I was bugging my teacher about this. You know, what can this mean? How can it be possible? Until he basically told me I'll understand later when I grow up or something. But there is this mysterious thing. It says, what's written in the tefillin of Hashem? It says, Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goyachad ba'aretz. who is like your nation, Israel, one nation in the world. So he said, if Hashem does mitzvahs, now Hashem, let's say, can't do an Aveira, okay, but there are some things in the world that aren't a mitzvah and aren't an Aveira. Chazal have a fascinating term for it. They're called Divrei Reshus. Divrei Reshus is poorly translated, mistranslated by many people as things you have permission to do. Right? If we take, for example, playing tennis. There's no mitzvah in the Torah, thou shalt play tennis. There's no Aveira in the Torah, thou shalt not play tennis. So people say, okay, that's something the Torah lets you do because the Torah couldn't care less. He said that's a very big mistake. The word Reshus is like we see in Hilchos Shabbos. Reshus HaYochid, Reshus HaRabim, it means domain. It means that which you control. It's even related to the Hebrew word for a net, reshet, which controls the fish or whatever else happens to be in that net, or butterflies. Okay, so in modern Hebrew, Reshut HaAtikot, the Israel Antiquities Authority. It means authority. So Divrei Reshus means your tennis playing can either be something which brings Kiddush Hashem into the world, or something which brings the opposite. It's different than a mitzvah because a mitzvah built in brings that Kedusha into the world. An Aveira brings that Chilul Hashem into the world. Divrei Reshus are those things in your life, and this is really the majority of things we're spending our time doing in our life, that are meant to be positive in terms of spirituality and not negative. Rav Hutner, based on the Chavos HaLevavos, would say there's no neutral in Ruchnis, there's no Switzerland, right? There's no Parav. Something ends up one way or the other. We said that Hashem does a mitzvah, and that mitzvah was exemplified for us by Chazal as Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. So he said if we want to follow that path, the equivalent of Hashem doing a mitzvah in the world is doing something which openly expresses the uniqueness of Am Yisrael as his unique nation. For example, Kriyas Yamsuf, splitting the Red Sea. That could be called a mitzvah. What about Divrei Reshus? Does Hashem have Divrei Reshus? I guess so. We read the news every day. There's stuff happening all over the world and throughout history that we have no idea why Hashem is doing these things. Why is there a tsunami in this country? Why is this invention made? Why is any of these countless things that are happening? It says the Megillah, which is an Igeret, it's called in the end of the Megillah an Igeret, a letter which is written to Am Yisrael, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, look at this snapshot of the Megillah. When you read it through from beginning to end, you see that all of these seemingly random Divrei Reshus I was doing were all being done for you. All being done in connection to you, in connection to what's happening to you, in connection to your destiny. So this is the way we're supposed to look at the world, and then, he said, we're supposed to respond to that by living our life that way as well. The result of a Purim, and take note, Purim is on a regular work day. Purim is a day in which you can light fires, and you can drive your car, and you can do all these different things, and yet the world of the Yadayim, of the you're doing, can be raised up. And that is the true victory over Amalek. We are in this world of Asiyah together with Esav, with Amalek. Hayadayim Yedei Esav. But Am Yisrael, when they awaken their internal, the Kol Yaakov, and then that affects the things which we do and elevates them, then that's our victory. You may not feel it as you're doing it, but when you do it with the right focus and you remember these things, so then all of those things are being awakened and will eventually come out and bring about that geula which is there. So this is our goal on Purim. We remain in the world of Maisa, a world in which Esav is usually primary, a world of eating and drinking, a world of joy that can sometimes turn in the wrong way. And if we remember who we are, and if we don't let our hands weaken from the things that we do, we come out of Purim with a renewed Kabbalah Satorah. Right? Chazal say, they darshan kimu v'kiblu aleim, they received the Torah again. Why did they accept the Torah again? What's happening? Because they learned the power of Asiyah once again. They realized that they are connected to something which is far above, but the only way that they can access it is through actions. The only way that's there is to be able to follow the instructions of Mordechai and Esther and Lech Knosset Kol HaYehudim, to gather together and to daven and to fast and to care and to think about each other. I saw in one sefer a beautiful thing, the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu was there, and the idea of Aaron and Hur on either side of him holding up his hands. What was that for? Why was that? Especially because Moshe Rabbeinu had been on Har Sinai, he had such powers, because it was to teach us. Not everybody can always be focused in everything they're doing on connecting their doings in this world with Shem Shamayim and to Kedusha. We have our ups and we have our downs. But because we are all of us, one person fills in what the other person isn't doing. And we can hold each other up and protect and do that way. That's why it's so key to be able to do that and to see it. So this is the world of Purim, this is the world of Amalek, and to realize that danger is still there. We think that Amalek or Esav is just this kind of atheist party guy who says, forget about this God thing and just come and eat and drink. It's something different. It's saying that there is spirituality in the world. We see Haman playing with whatever kind of spiritual powers with the poor, with the lots he was trying to cast. A true rationalist would not feel or see anything in terms of that. But he says that's not something that's affected by who you are or what you do. It's just something that's there, and to ride it. Am Yisrael, in times of haster aster, in times of hiding, in times of gullus, and these are the personal gullios in our lives. You feel the rifyon yadayim when you're having a hard time in life, and you davened, and you tried, and you made big changes in your life, and you're not seeing, not just that you're not seeing physical rewards, like getting a great job and winning the lottery and finding your shidduch immediately, not seeing those things. You don't even see the spiritual results. You don't see, I've been trying this for a long time. I don't like it any more than when I started. Am I not supposed to love this stuff already? I've been fighting not doing X for so long. Isn't it supposed to get like easy and I'm going to feel the pleasure and joy of detaching from that negativity? Why am I not feeling it? Rifyon yadayim. That all weakens the hands. That's Amalek, that's the suffix. What we do is to do what we have to do. Right? To go and to do the thing, not asking that question of Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. He showed that to us. And he showed it to us especially in the Geras of Purim, which ends the revelations of Tanakh. The letter that he writes to us every year in every situation that we're in. Remember that the one who instated Purim, who said Kidvuni Ledoros, was Esther, who was stuck in Achashverosh's palace with Achashverosh, despite everything she did for Am Yisrael. She wasn't looking at that. She said, make Yemei Mishtos v'simcha. Because even though I'm stuck in that situation, the relationship with Hashem is there. The plan and destiny of Am Yisrael is moving forward. And we have to strengthen our hands and get a grip on that which we have to do, and then we'll bring everything to where it's supposed to be. Have a wonderful evening. Okay. I guess we'll send out a message. Next week is Purim for us outside Yerushalayim people. So maybe if we would bump it up to Tuesday or something, if that might be good for people, I'll send out a message.
Only if there's much.